Race categories are unscientific and a danger to your health. I'll tell you why. If you take a cat, which is a feline, and you put this cat together with a lion, which is also a feline, the results could be disastrous. But if you take a human being and you pair that human being with another human being, the results could be quite positive. And the results could be quite varied. They could be dark and wide-nosed or lighter-skinned and thin-nosed. We don't nose. See, race is not about what's on the outside. Race, as in the human race, is what's on the inside. It is about stories. I'm going to tell you my story. My father's mother was African American, Native American. The world called her black. Now, my father's father was Filipino-Chinese, and the world called him Asian. My mother's parents were German Danish, and they were referred to as white. So if you look at my family, people say it's a mixed family, it's a mixed race family, and that we were supposed to be 1/8, 1/4, 1/2, this and that. But in fact, I am a human being. My parents could have children because they are both human beings. Now, what you don't know by looking at me is that I grew up in Germany and Japan, spent 14 years in Japan. I'm culturally Japanese. In fact, today I would still wear those lederhosen and eat my fish eyes if I could, but I can't. I came to Clark University in 1981 as a student. I had hair back then. I dyed my hair blue, I grabbed my crotch, and I said things like, "Hey, how you doing?" Because I figured that was my way of becoming an American. Not white, an American. I didn't understand what it was to be an American. We have 2 daughters. They are adopted. And people will literally say to me in public, "Where did you get them from?" They are both born here. They are U.S. citizens. I've traveled through many countries. I've been through 500 cities and towns in this country alone, and people want to put me in a box. I don't want to be in a box. I don't think you want to be in a box, and certainly you don't want to be in a box. I don't want to be in that box that's called race. So how do we define race today in this country? That's primarily things like skin color, and the hair texture, and the width of your nose, and, maybe the shape of your eyes, and maybe even your butt. Because we know for a fact that I have no back. Now, the fact that both of my daughters are good at math is not because of the shape of their eyes. The reason why they're good at math is because they both actually study. That's about it. Study, folks. Culture are your customs. It is how you were raised. It's not the fact that you eat certain kinds of food. It's how you eat that food. It's not the fact that you speak a language. It's how you speak that language. It's not the fact that we take our shoes off in our home. It is why we take the shoes off in our home. Those are culture, and that is the thing that you can hold deep inside, and no one can take that away from you. Ethnicity is the history of your cultures. So, for example, in my case, my father grew up in the Philippines, and his father is from the Philippines. So I am ethnically Filipino, but not culturally Filipino, because I don't know what it's like to live and be Filipino. That's my ethnicity. Nationality is your citizenship. That's all it is, just a piece of paper. If I was born here, and I was, I have a U.S. passport, and I left a day later, I could still run for president. Race. How was it started? Why? Well, people like Linnaeus back in the 1700s, they created and devised a way to categorize species, including humans. Now, in the middle of his hierarchy that he created was a box. In this box, which was called paradoxa, he listed the things that he couldn't quite explain. I would imagine today, if he lived, I would be in that box, because it's very difficult to explain what I am. Decades later, this guy named Blumenbach devised his own way of categorizing human beings into colors. So he drew a map of the world and broke it into 3 particular races. Now, I speak German, so the word Rasse means race. Kaukasche is the Caucasian race. The second one is Mongolische Rasse, which means the Mongolian race, which today would be referred to as the Asian race. The third one is Negroid Rasse, which means Negro, or today would be referred to as the black race. Underneath, each had subcategories. Now, interesting, 2 points. First is, Arya, at the very top of Kaukasche Rasse, is the original word for Iran. I don't think that Blumenbach was thinking that in his hierarchy, at the very top, were the Iranian people. And it is the origins of the word Aryan. And I do not think that Adolf Hitler was expecting that the Aryans, meaning the Iranians, were going to march to his particular drumbeat. At the very bottom of the Mongolische Rasse was the Amerikaner. And the Amerikaner, according to Blumenbach, were the original people of this part of the world, the Native Americans. He referred to them as Amerikaner, which was in the Asian race, or the Mongolische Rasse. But today, and hundreds of years after Columbus, who called them Indians, who would also be in the Mongolische Rasse, but not in this particular category, would be referred to as Asian. So, 1790 was the first U.S. census. In the census, at the very, very top, you had free white male over 16. At the bottom, always at the bottom because it's a hierarchy, was slave. Why was the census created? Run by the Office of Management and Budget. Now, the word budget is a key word here, because budget has to do with money. Money and power, ownership, and that's what it was all about. Who owned what and who owned whom? Rather, what, because slaves were a what back then. Decades later, the census created new categories: black, quadroon, and octoroon. So quadroon is if you were 1/4 black, no way to prove it, and 1/8 black. Underneath that was Chinese and Japanese. Now, those are countries, not races. You had Indian reservation, Indian percentage whites. You had to prove what percentage you were Indian, in this case, really Native American. It's very confusing. Decades after that, the census came up with a new way. You had black, Negro, which was not black at the time. Negro was white and black, and Neg, which my grandmother would have been, American Indian and black. Then there's Chinese, Japanese, and what was happening in this country in 1930 to add Mexican? What is the purpose of these categories? And white always remains white. It never changes, including the biggest change was in the year 2000 National Census, when white was still white at the top, not alphabetical. Why is it at the top? Why not separate white into, let's say, Irish and German and Swedish? No, but underneath that you had all these other categories, an influx of all kinds of ways we could describe ourselves. Most of them are countries. But curious enough, you had the opportunity to fill out other Asian. It asked us to define what those races were. This is amazing. And the last one was some other race. What is this race? And you know how when people watch television, they see things like, oh, that must be Jackie Chan. It's like, no, just not all Asians are the same on television. It's like, oh, that must be Denzel Washington. No, not all black people look the same. Come on, dude. So I figured, you know, First Amendment, freedom of speech, I could do whatever I want. So I created a whole new category called that guy from that TV show. I wrote it in. They still don't like me. The mixed race community is growing by leaps and bounds. The second fastest growing population in this country are blended families, families that do not resemble what we think are the categories that have existed for so long. Between 2000 and 2010 alone, a huge leap. And the number of people who you can identify just visually, including the president himself in 2010, who marked off only black, are, through society and through politics, were forced to and are forced to designate themselves only as one particular race. Rashida Jones, Kamau Bell, and all of these other people, Keanu Reeves, are mixed. And yet the industries require them to refer to themselves as only one particular race. I'm a professional actor. I know this for a case. So, what are the components that design what we call the race attributes? Well, there are 46 chromosomes, there's 6 billion DNA, and there are over 37 trillion cells in our human body. Trillion! We have more cells in our body than we can imagine how many stars and planets and galaxies are out there in the universe. There is more in us than out there. And we have the audacity to eliminate all of that and think of ourselves as only what? Black, white, Asian, when only 0.02% of our DNA has anything to do with the shape of our nose, the texture of our hair, the color of our skin, and maybe even your butt. Racial categories are dangerous. Historically speaking, the scientific rationale for dividing people by race was used to kill people, murder people, genocide after genocide, the Holocaust, genocide against Africans and Native Americans and the Koreans and Chinese in World War II. It was used against people. It is still used today. Yesterday, the day before that, last year. We know this continues on and on because we believe that, in fact, we can divide people by race. If you teach a child, this person is black, that person is Asian, that person's white, this person's Native American, and all of those categories, if you teach a child to believe that, that child will believe that, absorb it, and continue for the rest of his or her life believing it, when in fact it's not actually true. It's imprisoned in our minds to always think of ourselves as being different visually. We don't know the story. What's the story? What's your story? Tell me about your story. It didn't matter to people like Herrnstein and Murray in the 1990s who wrote this book called The Bell Curve. Over 900 pages of mathematical formulas and all kinds of rationales as to why black people are less intelligent than white people. Bestseller, New York Times. For weeks, because people wanted to know, is it true? Can I use this? What is this information? I need to know. For what reason? For nefarious reasons? Maybe. People like David Duke, who's a former leader of the KKK, ran for president in the 1990s, around the same time this book was printed, on the platform of hopefully being able to physically and geographically divide the country into races. He was willing to migrate people to where he wanted them to be. Now, I figured, if racial categories aren't real, let's take something that actually is real. Like, for example, 1/3 of the population of the planet is lactose intolerant, shall not eat cheese or heavy creams. So if that's 1/3, I say they stay over there with their global warming, and I stay over here with my foamy latte. See, Disney has never done a good job with diversifying characters and characteristics of the human experience, although they have tried to do the mixed race thing. Pocahontas with her beautiful hair and her nose and her cheeks and her makeup and her mascara and her pouty lips, kissing the man who raped her. And the world went berserk. The kids loved it. Instant classic. Yes, Disney, Hollywood. Of course, speaking of Hollywood, in the 1960s, this guy named Charlton Heston got to kiss an ape. America went ape! In the movie, the original movie, Planet of the Apes, where he fell in love and America went, "Aw, it's so beautiful." I'm like, gross. But it was not okay for my parents to kiss. It was not okay for them to have children. It was illegal for them to be married in the state of New York because people fundamentally believed that by their faith or their understanding or their culture, it is inappropriate for two people of the so-called different races to have children. But they did. And I'm here today to tell you, I'm one. In this huge, immense place called the universe, where there are billions of opportunities for us to all make choices. Now, there is only one person on this planet who represents everything in the universe. Are you ready to meet this person? Are you ready to meet this person? Are you ready? Yes, it's Miss Universe. With her gorgeous hair and her lips and her smile. Look at those teeth. What DNA determined that? And her wave, she's saying to the universe, I just want world peace. Nay, I want universe peace. Which is awesome because in the 1970s, we sent out into the universe the Pioneer spacecraft. On the side of it was etched a picture of the human being, a male and a female, a penis and a vagina, that was scientifically the point. Oh, God, they kind of look Caucasian there, but. But the aliens saw this and said, take me to your leader. Because I know they speak like this because I'm mixed, you know. In this pie chart of this planet that we call Earth, 100% of you in the audience are 100% human being. That's it. 100%. All of us. Simple as that, right? Simple as that. The way to end racism is to eliminate racial categories. Doesn't mean that everything else is going to be eliminated. I'm talking about taking the first step to teach us and our children that we are actually biologically one, with billions of magnificent stories. I want you to tell your story. I want you to help us eliminate the racial categories and take a step forward and embrace your cultures. Race is only human.